I, 18F, have had a complicated relationship with my mom, 42F, for the past few years. My dad passed away when I was 12 due to a sudden heart attack. It was a shock to all of us. He was always so healthy, coaching my soccer team and going for runs every morning. The day it happened, he was out for his usual jog. Mom got a call from the hospital and our world turned upside down. After Dad died, it was just me and my mom for a while. We were really close back then. We'd spend weekends baking cookies and watching old movies. She'd help me with my homework and I'd help her in the garden. We had this tradition of girls' nights every Friday where we'd order pizza, do face masks, and talk about everything and anything. I felt like I could tell her anything. Things started to change when I was 15. Mom met Greg, 39M, at a work conference. She came home talking about this charming guy she'd met, and I was happy for her. Dad had been gone for 3 years, and I thought it was time for her to find happiness again. When they started dating, I was supportive. I even helped her get ready for their first date, picking out her outfit and doing her makeup. But as time went on, I noticed that Greg was becoming more and more controlling. It started small. He'd called multiple times when Mom was out with me, asking when she'd be home. He always had to know where we were going, who we were talking to, and what we were doing. If Mom and I were having a movie night, he'd text constantly, interrupting our time together. I tried to talk to my mom about it. I remember one night after Greg had called for the 5th time during our dinner, I said, "Mom, don't you think Greg's being a bit clingy?" She brushed it off, saying, "Oh, honey, he just cares about us. He wants to make sure we're safe." But things only got worse from there. Greg started spending more time at our house. He'd make comments about how I dressed, saying things like, "Don't you think that skirt's a bit short?" Or, "You're wearing too much makeup." Mom never stood up for me. Instead, she'd say, "Greg's just looking out for you. Maybe you should change." Our Friday girls' nights became less and less frequent. Mom would cancel at the last minute because Greg wanted to take her out. When I'd get upset, she'd say, "We can do it next week. Greg doesn't get much free time. We need to take advantage of it." Greg's criticism extended to every aspect of my life. If I got an A instead of an A, he'd say, "I thought you were smarter than that." When I joined the debate team, he scoffed and said, "What's the point of that? It's not like you'll ever be a lawyer." My mom never contradicted him. She'd just give me a look that said, "Don't argue." I started spending more time in my room, avoiding Greg whenever he was over. I threw myself into my studies and extracurricular activities, anything to keep me out of the house. My grades improved, but I was miserable. The breaking point came on my 17th birthday. I had been planning a small party with my friends for weeks. Nothing big, just a sleepover with my 5 closest friends. We were going to order pizza, watch movies, and just hang out. My mom had promised to help me set everything up. She even said she'd make her famous chocolate cake, the one she used to make for my dad's birthdays. The night before my birthday, I was in my room wrapping some party favors when I heard Greg and my mom talking downstairs. Greg was saying something about a last-minute deal on a weekend getaway. My heart sank. I knew what was coming. Sure enough, Mom came up to my room a few minutes later. "Sweetie," she said, looking uncomfortable. "I know we had plans for your birthday, but Greg's got this amazing deal on a trip to the beach. We'll only be gone for the weekend. We can celebrate when we get back, okay?" I was devastated. I tried to argue, reminding her of all the preparations we'd made, how my friends were looking forward to it. But my mom just said, "Greg doesn't get much time off work. We need to take advantage of it when we can. You can have a party anytime. Your friends will understand." That night, after Mom and Greg left, I called my Aunt Sarah, 38F, my dad's sister. Aunt Sarah and I had always been close. She used to babysit me when I was little, and after Dad died, she made sure to stay in touch. We'd drift apart a bit since Mom started dating Greg, but I knew I could trust her. I told her everything that had been happening. How Greg controlled everything, how Mom always took his side, how I felt like I was losing my mother. Aunt Sarah was furious. She offered to let me stay with her for a while, and I accepted. When my mom and Greg got back from their trip, I told her I was moving in with Aunt Sarah. My mom was shocked. She tried to convince me to stay, saying she'd make it up to me, but I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bags and left. It's been a year since then. I've been living with Aunt Sarah and her husband, Uncle Tom, 40M. They've been amazing. For the first time in years, I feel like I have a stable home life. They've been supportive of my studies and have even helped me apply to colleges. Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom have 2 kids of their own, my cousins Jack, 10M, and Emma, 8F. Living with them has been like being part of a real family again. We have dinner together every night, something I hadn't done since before Mom met Greg. Uncle Tom helps me with my math homework, and Aunt Sarah and I have long talks about books and movies, just like I used to with Mom. Living with them has made me realize how much I've been missing, how much I'd changed to try and please Greg and my mom. I've started to rediscover the things I love. I joined the school choir, something Greg had always mocked. I'm playing soccer again, and it feels great to be back on the field. My mom has been trying to contact me more frequently lately. At first, it was just the occasional text. Then she started calling more often. She says she misses me and wants me to come home. She claims that things have changed and that she and Greg have been working on their relationship. But I'm not sure I believe her, or if I even want to go back. I'm torn. Part of me misses my mom and the relationship we used to have. I miss our girls' nights, our inside jokes, the way she used to stroke my hair when I was upset. But another part of me is scared of going back to that toxic environment. I don't trust Greg, and I'm not sure I trust my mom to stand up for me if things go south again. Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom have told me I can stay with them as long as I want. They've even offered to help with college expenses if needed, but I know my mom is hurt that I've chosen to stay with them instead of coming home. AETF for refusing to move back in with my mom? Am I being too harsh? Should I give her another chance? I feel like I'm finally in a good place, but the guilt is eating me up inside. Edit. Thank you all for your responses. To clarify a few things. 1. My mom and Greg aren't married, but they've been talking about it. 2. I've tried talking to my mom about how Greg's behavior affects me multiple times, but she always dismisses it or says I'm exaggerating. 3. Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom have legal guardianship of me now. They got it shortly after I moved in with them. 4. I'm planning to start college this fall, so I'd only be living at home for the summer if I did move back. Update 1. It's been about 2 months since my original post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It really helped me gain perspective on my situation. After reading all your comments, I decided to meet up with my mom to talk things through. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop near Aunt Sarah's house. I was incredibly nervous the morning of our meeting. Aunt Sarah helped me pick out an outfit and gave me a pep talk before I left. Remember, she said, you're strong, and you deserve to be heard. When I arrived at the coffee shop, my mom was already there. She looked different somehow. Smaller, maybe. Or just tired. We ordered our drinks, a latte for her, hot chocolate for me, just like old times, and found a quiet table in the corner. The conversation was intense. I told my mom everything. How hurt I was when she consistently chose Greg over me. How his criticisms affected my self-esteem, and how I felt like I'd lost my mom. I told her about the birthday party. How devastated I was when she canceled it for Greg's trip. I even brought up old memories, like the time Greg criticized my soccer playing and Mom didn't defend me, even though she knew how much I loved the sport. As I spoke, I could see the emotions playing across my mom's face. Shock, sadness, guilt. She listened without interrupting, which was new. Usually she'd try to defend herself or Greg, but this time she just let me talk. When I finished, my mom was quiet for a long moment. Then she started to cry. Not just a few tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs. People at nearby tables were starting to stare, but she didn't seem to notice. Between sobs, my mom started talking. She admitted that she'd been so afraid of being alone after Dad died that she'd clung to Greg, even when she knew things weren't right. She talked about how lost she felt after Dad's death, how she felt like she was failing as a mother. Greg had seemed like a lifeline, someone to help her navigate single parenthood. But I was wrong, she said, wiping her eyes. I was so focused on not being alone that I didn't see what I was doing to you. I'm so sorry. She told me she'd been going to therapy for the past few months to work on her codependency issues. Apparently, after I left, she had a wake-up call. She realized that in trying to keep Greg, she'd lost me. Then came the biggest shock of all. My mom told me that she and Greg had broken up. It hadn't happened right away after I left. They'd tried couples counseling first, but Greg wasn't willing to change. He didn't see anything wrong with his behavior. The final straw came when he suggested that Mom cut off contact with me entirely if I wouldn't fall in line. That's when I knew, Mom said. I'd already lost you because of him. I wasn't willing to lose myself too. I was stunned. Part of me was relieved, but another part was angry. Why did it take me leaving for her to see what was happening? Why couldn't she have chosen me sooner? We talked for hours. My mom apologized over and over, promising things would be different if I came home. She said she'd respect my boundaries and that she wanted to rebuild our relationship. She talked about restarting our Friday girls' nights, about coming to my soccer games again. I told her I needed time to think about it. I explained that while I appreciated her apology, trust takes time to rebuild. I also made it clear that I'm happy living with Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom, and that any reconciliation would be on my terms. When I got home, I talked it all over with Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom. They listened patiently as I recounted the entire conversation. They were supportive, but cautioned me to take things slow. Aunt Sarah suggested that instead of moving back in right away, I could start with regular visits to see how things go. Your mom needs to prove that she's changed, Uncle Tom said. Words are easy. It's actions that count. I've decided to take their advice. I'm going to start having dinner with my mom once a week. We're also going to try family therapy together. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm also keeping my guard up. I know change takes time, and they need to see consistent effort from my mom before I can fully trust her again. For now, I'm staying with Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom. They've been my rock through all of this, and I'm not ready to leave the stability they provide. My mom seemed disappointed when I told her, but she said she understood. I'm still processing everything, but I feel like I'm on the right path. I'm focusing on healing and on preparing for college in the fall. It's strange to think that in just a few months, I'll be starting a whole new chapter of my life. Part of me is excited, but another part is scared. Will my relationship with my mom be strong enough to survive the distance? Will I be able to trust her? To be there for me when I need her? Only time will tell, I guess. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'll keep you all updated on how things progress with my mom. Update 2. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have been going. The weekly dinners with my mom have been interesting. At first, they were awkward and tense. We both struggled to find things to talk about that didn't lead back to the past. But as the weeks went by, it got easier. We've been slowly rebuilding our relationship, finding common ground again. One of the first dinners stands out in my memory. Mom made lasagna, my favorite dish from childhood. As we ate, she hesitantly asked about my college plans. It was the first time in years that she'd shown genuine interest in my future without any criticism attached. We ended up talking for hours about my chosen major and the clubs I was interested in joining. The family therapy sessions have been challenging but helpful. Our therapist, Dr. Johnson, has been great at mediating our conversations and helping us understand each other's perspectives. It's been eye-opening to hear my mom talk about her fears and insecurities. I'm starting to understand why she made some of the choices she did, even if I don't agree with them. One session stands out in particular. We were talking about the night I left, and my mom broke down. She admitted that when she came home and found me gone, she realized the magnitude of what she'd done. She said she spent nights crying, looking at old photos of us, wondering how she'd let things get so bad. I found the birthday cake I was supposed to make for your party, she said, her voice shaking. It was still in the freezer. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried for hours. It was hard to hear, but it also helped me see that she really has been trying to change. She's been going to individual therapy as well, working on her self-esteem and learning to set boundaries. As for Greg, he's completely out of the picture. My mom told me he tried to contact her a few times, but she blocked him. She's focusing on herself and on rebuilding our relationship. She even started volunteering at a women's shelter, saying she wanted to help other women who might be in similar situations. I'm still living with Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom. They've been incredibly supportive through all of this. They've even started joining us for dinner sometimes, which has been nice. It feels like we're becoming a big, extended family. I started college this fall, and it's been going well. I'm living on campus, which has given me some much-needed independence. My mom has been respectful of my space, which I appreciate. She texts me regularly but doesn't push if I'm busy. There have been some bumps along the way. Sometimes old habits creep back in. My mom will say something that reminds me of how things used to be, and I'll get defensive. But we're learning to communicate better, to express our feelings without attacking each other. Last month, I had a big soccer game. It was the first time my mom came to watch me play since before Greg. I was nervous about her being there, worried she might criticize my performance like Greg used to. But when I scored a goal, I looked up to see her cheering louder than anyone else in the stands. After the game, she hugged me and told me how proud she was. It felt like a piece of our old relationship had finally clicked back into place. I'm still taking things day by day. I'm not ready to move back in with my mom, and I'm not sure if I ever will be. But I'm glad we're working on our relationship. It feels like we're building something new, something healthier than what we had before. Update 3. It's been almost a year since my original post, and I wanted to give one final update. My relationship with my mom has continued to improve. We still have our weekly dinners, and now there's something I look forward to rather than dread. We've found a new dynamic. More like adult friends than the parent-child relationship we used to have. The family therapy sessions have been incredibly helpful. We've worked through a lot of our past issues and learned better ways to communicate. One of the most significant breakthroughs was when my mom acknowledged how her actions had affected my self-esteem and trust in relationships. It was validating to hear her take responsibility without making excuses. Last month, we had a particularly emotional session where we talked about my dad. It was the first time since his death that we really opened up about how much we missed him. Mom shared stories about their early dating days that I'd never heard before. We both ended up crying, but it felt cathartic. It was like we were finally allowing ourselves to grieve together. I'm still living on campus at college, and I love it. When I go home for breaks, I split my time between Aunt Sarah's and my mom's place. It's a balance that works for me right now. Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom have been incredibly understanding about me spending more time with Mom. They've told me repeatedly that their door is always open, no matter what happens with Mom. My mom has really turned things around. She's focusing on her career, has taken up new hobbies, and even started volunteering at a local women's shelter. She seems happier and more confident than I've seen her in years. Last week, she told me she's thinking about going back to school to finish her degree. It's something she always wanted to do but put off when she had me. Seeing her excited about her own future makes me hopeful for ours. As for me, I'm doing well. College is challenging but rewarding. I've made some great friends and even started dating someone. His name is Alex, and he's in my sociology class. I was nervous about introducing him to my mom, given our history, but it went surprisingly well. She was respectful and didn't try to overstep any boundaries. She even invited him to join us for dinner next time he's in town. I've joined the college soccer team, and it feels great to be playing competitively again. Mom has come to a few of my games. Seeing her in the stands, cheering me on, reminds me of how things used to be before Greg. It's not the same. We can never go back to how things were, but it's good in its own way. There have been some difficult moments, too. Last month, we had an argument when Mom made a comment about my clothes that reminded me of Greg. But instead of letting it escalate, we both took a step back, calmed down, and then discussed why it upset me. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Looking back, I'm glad I stood my ground and didn't move back in when my mom first asked. Taking the time to rebuild our relationship slowly has been crucial. We both needed to grow and change, and that wouldn't have happened if we had rushed back into living together. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I feel optimistic. Our relationship isn't perfect, but it's healthier than it's been in a long time. I'm proud of the progress we've made and hopeful for what's to come. As I write this, I'm sitting in my dorm room looking at a photo of me and Mom from last weekend. We went hiking together, something we used to do with Dad. In the picture, we're both smiling, genuinely happy. It's not the end of our story, but it feels like the beginning of a new chapter.